Did you ever wonder what happened to that first car you got? The one you packed up, you hauled all your junk to college with? The one you had your parents co-sign? Well, I'm pretty sure I got it behind me, and that's this '09 Honda Civic. It's 15 years old, and today we're gonna decide if it's held up and if it's a buy or a bust. That's right, today we are going to take a look at this 2009 Honda Civic. It's got 186,000 miles on it. There is a reason that it has such a great name, and that is because they have been proven to be reliable. That being said, they're not all perfect, this one included, and today we're going to go through and take a look at the common problems that this one's had, as well as what things you need to look out for if you're looking to pick up a cheap small car. As we start the tour around the outside of our beautiful Honda Civic, you'll notice that there's some oxidation on the headlights, and this does not have some of the clear coat peel that is so common on other Honda vehicles. Styling wise, I think you might love it, you might hate it. I was never a huge fan personally of the design on these Civics. That doesn't mean that they're not functional or not good. It's just maybe not my favorite design, especially because I thought the previous generation Civics looked pretty nice. As we come to the back here, you'll notice that there's a little scrape on the rear here where some rust has started. Now, these are not a super common car for rust, but we are in the Northeast, and you always, always want to check out rust. It's like a #1 priority if you're in an area where they use salt, or if the car came from an area where they use salt. But overall, the paint shines really nice. Even the undercarriage is quite clean on it. And if you did have any rust, it would probably show up on those wheel wells in the rear first. So other than that little scrape on the other side, they are clean as can be. One of the things as I go down the sides on both sides of the car is the black around the doors is fading and chipped. Even a little bit more than I would expect of a car of this age, but that's such a minor detail, I'm not sure that I even care about it. Everything else on the outside has held up remarkably well. The chrome shines well, the paint is shiny, in nice shape. With a little bit of cleanup and a wax job, this would be a darn spiffy car. Under the hood here, you can see that we got the 1.8 liter Honda motor that puts out a whopping 140 horsepower. Now, it actually is running pretty smooth, and you might have been able to see it in the video, I'm not sure. It sounds really good, it really does. But it does have a little shake to it, and you can feel it inside the car, and that's because one of the biggest things you're gonna have on these, one of the most common problems, is motor mounts, and you can tell that this one is going to need one soon because it has that vibration that's so all too common with these cars. Now, motor mounts are not the only issue. There is a problem with these cars that is not very common, and Honda has largely taken care of it. There's a service bulletin out about it, and if your car found you had the right VIN, they would actually replace your engine for this, but it was cracked blocks. Now, that went from the beginning of this generation in '06 up till very early years in 2009. But you would end up usually with coolant leaks was the most common symptom, but they did have an issue with some of the castings in the blocks for these, and you definitely wanted to look out for that. But most have been replaced because Honda took care of it. So I don't know if it's a big issue for you to worry about, but if it's leaking coolant and you can't figure out where it's coming from or something, you might want to have that checked out and see if the work has been done. You can call Honda and find that out. Now, the other few common problems that I feel like I just need to mention, but they aren't a huge deal, there goes a B, is timing chain tensioners can wear out on these. It's not super common, but you can do that proactively just to make sure that the timing chain tensioner doesn't fail, because that would cause a major issue. Other ones that pop up from time to time are fuel pump issues. And then this car has actually had the AC compressor already replaced. It is a common Honda problem. Hondas are sort of notorious for air conditioning issues, especially in this generation of cars across their whole lineup. So this one's had it done. It's not the end of the world, but AC in the summer is definitely an important thing for me, at least. Now, even though I have mentioned a few issues underneath here, the engine and transmissions are quite reliable, more so than even, a lot of other cars on the market. So it's not something I would shy away from, even though there is those few issues. Like I said, most of the major issues are either preventative or, like a cracked block, has likely already been taken care of on these. Motor mount, AC compressor, those types of things you might have a problem with, but they're not terribly expensive to take care of, and I wouldn't shy away from it because of that. As we open the door and look at the interior, you're gonna see that it's actually held up okay. Now, the problem with these vehicles is they were an entry-level car, and whenever you get that, a cheaper car, it seems that people don't treat them as nice, and it's tough to find really nice Honda Civics of this generation or any of the older ones, really, unless you're going up to something pretty new, because people just trash them is kind of what happens. The biggest wear I noticed inside was this armrest. The fabric is kind of turned into plastic on the inside there. That's kind of a common Honda problem as well, that their velour or whatever type of material they have over time does degrade, but it usually doesn't rip, and that really is the case here. The seats are actually in decent shape, but they do show a little bit of that kind of a black stain, it looks like, but it's really more of a wear and tear on the seat material itself. Now, as far as everything else on the interior, they're kind of wearing pretty well, and I think that's because they used basically cheap plastic materials. There's nothing really special in here to break. It's very utilitarian inside here. Now, beyond cosmetic wear and tear, as far as electronics and things on the inside, there's a few small, and I would consider them to even be minor problems, but I want to make you aware of them. The window switches, especially on the driver's side, because you use it all the time and it tends to get the most wear and tear, as well as wet if you open the door and it's raining. The switches on that side can corrode and stop working, and you might notice that your window is not going up down. It could be a window regulator or something, but a lot of the time it's those window switches. The other thing that is common is for the passenger seat. The airbag sensor for the passenger seat tends to go bad. So if you have an airbag light on, a lot of the times it is the sensor for the seat over here. Now, that's not a huge deal. You can get it fixed. A lot of times it's even just the connection down underneath, but if you have to replace the sensor, it's not a huge deal, and I would definitely check that out rather than having to look at an airbag light forever. This car does not have the airbag light or a check engine. The only thing it has is TPMS, which is for the tire pressure sensors, which every car of this age at this point, these sensors are dead. It's just how long the batteries last. Nothing wrong with that Honda did wrong there. It's just time for them to be replaced. The only other really common thing that I think is worth mentioning is the wiper motors do sometimes go out on these, and you just have to replace the wiper motor. Again, it's kind of a minor thing, other than if you were driving somewhere and it's raining, that could be a big issue for that time, but as far as the actual cost to replace is not terrible. But if you're having problems with your wipers, check out that wiper motor. In the back seat of the Civic here, it's a very basic economy car area to hang out. The seat is not uncomfortable, but even I at 5'8", I do feel a little bit large for the car, and this seat is sitting exactly where I would sit up front. I do have nice legroom, so that is a good thing, and it's not uncomfortable, I wouldn't say. The only thing I would say is if you are taller than me, you're going to hit your head, especially if you lean back at all, because my hair is touching the ceiling of this car, so you probably wouldn't want to roll it either. That seems like that might be a problem. But for a long road trip, if you're tall and you need the headroom, that might be a problem. Legroom, you're probably fine. We have reached the test drive portion of the video. Does anyone else hate the dinging that Honda has for when there's a key in the switch? It is one of my least favorite things about Hondas. I think they could have picked any other tone other than the Ford one. Ford actually has them beat, it's worse. But it is a really annoying thing to deal with. But we are gonna get on the road with this 15-year-old Honda Civic. Hopefully we make it, but I think we'll be all right because, I mean, Civics have been proven to be reliable, right? Now, the 1.8 liter, as I mentioned, has 140 horsepower, which should be decent for a little economy car. They get like 26 and 36 miles to the gallon to city versus highway, so you're going to average somewhere in between there, probably around 30, which is decent, but obviously new cars are going to do much better. Now, we are at 30 miles an hour, and I'm just going to do a little pull here. And it is not impressive at all. That was flat to the floor, and we didn't hit 40 miles an hour. It has very little pickup, but I believe that it's actually more of a fault of the transmission than it is the engine's power, actually. As the Civic shifts through the gears, if you're just kind of driving normally, it works pretty well. But I feel like when you need to pass or you need to get on it, the car just kind of falls flat on its face. And I really think the transmission's just a little clunky. Not that anything is wrong with it, I just don't love the way that it chooses to select gears. It seems like you always got to put your foot to the floor to get anything done. I'd probably get used to it if I drove it every day, but just hopping in one, I think it shifts weird. I already remarked on the dash, and one of the things I did want to mention is I do like that they put the speedometer up top with your temperature and your fuel gauge. That is really handy. It is kind of like having a heads-up display from wish.com. It's not as good, but it is functional, even though it looks a little stupid. Now, as far as handling, I actually have always liked the way this generation of Civics handle. I think they go around corners really nicely. It almost feels a little bit sporty, even though it's not. At highway, I do find them to be a slight bit twitchy, but it is a small car, and that's kind of how they are most of the time. Overall, I think if I was just driving around as a commuting person by myself, I would be perfectly happy with this Civic. I think it would be a good commuting simple car that keeps me away from a car payment and gets good fuel mileage. So I really can't hate on it too hard, even though there's a few things that I do like to nitpick. Now it's time for the rubber to meet the road. We're back from our test drive, and we have to take the time to decide if this is a buy or if it's a bust. The Honda Civic really was like the entry car in this generation. Like the 2000s were just crazy for people getting Honda Civics as their first car to run around because they had such a reputation of reliability. We've gone over a lot of issues that these cars do commonly have, and I mean, it has 186,000 miles and it's 15 years old. Things are gonna pop up. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't buy one. The market on these, it really depends where you are in the condition. Like I said, they are tough to find in nice shape. They have been well used, most of them, because it was younger folks who bought them and they weren't that careful. But they're probably around the $4,000 to $6,000 depending on the condition. If you get a beat one, it might be $2,000 or $3,000. That being said, they're still pretty reliable. You got to watch out for the things that I mentioned, but I think you could buy one even with 150, 200,000 miles and still get another 100,000 miles out of it, which is not a bad deal. That's why today we are going to declare this a buy. You probably saw that coming from the beginning. It's hard to go against the Civic nameplate. Now, the one thing I haven't mentioned in this video is the Civic Hybrid. I'd like to make a separate video on that because it's a completely different animal. Those have more problems though, and I might have a different decision. But if you're getting the base Honda Civic, it is a great little runaround car. There is things that I, nitpick with them. The styling is mediocre. You might have some of the problems I mentioned, and I don't love the way that the transmission works in the car. But the overall driving experience for day-to-day is pretty decent, and it's a fuel-efficient, cheap car, so how can you go wrong? Now, if you have one of these, I want to hear what common problems you've had, if you agree with my decision that it's a buy or if it's a bust. If you disagree, that's okay too. Put your reasons down below. But today, the Civic is a buy. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head full of every single doubt, yeah. Please say any negative thoughts, I pop off when I hear people say I cannot. I get off to the thought of proving everyone wrong, I won't stop to the top, so you better back